wrote the book because everybody likes the Dalai Lama. They think he's cute. They like his spiritual teachings. But they think his nonviolent political leadership is useless. And they think he sort of doesn't know what he's doing, and it's all so sad, and you got to really fight. That's because that's the ideology of our militaristic culture. And the premise of the book is, no, his nonviolent leadership is global leadership. It's the leadership of leaders. And we have to follow that advice now. If we go on with the militarism, if we go into World War III, which we have waiting on every front, everyone will lose. And those people who are relying on conquest, like the Dick Cheneys of this world, have lost. I mean, they're shouting that they haven't and they did great and all this, but it's just a complete lie, and everybody really knows it in the masses of the people. And the Dalai Lama is the people who walks the talk of nonviolence. Here he's under genocidal threat and actual action by the Chinese People's Republic for many years, 50, 60 years, and yet, although he's very discouraged and he admits he's sick of them, especially the government, and the people he knows don't have the true information about Tibet, he insists on the nonviolent approach. And he insists on bringing China into the family of peaceful nations, not the imperialist imitation of imperialism that they are doing. In fact, they're tripling our imperialist behavior of the last centuries in like a few decades. And that is totally destructive to the world. So the premise of my book is we have to listen to him on the social, political level as well as the spiritual level. And therefore, he really does matter. That's the premise. And when people read the book, I've had the gratifying experience over the last year and a half that even Tibet supporters, I noticed was one of my motives, they'll go out and say, free Tibet, and then you ask them, do you think it will be free? They say, oh, no, never be free. I can't, too big. China, no, they have no weapons. And so what's the use of their shouting free Tibet if they're hopeless? So when they finish reading mine, they realize that it's got to happen. It actually is realistic. What's unrealistic is to think that everybody's going to conquer everybody or somebody's going to conquer somebody. U.S. is finished. We can go and blow up some more countries, but that'll just make people more mad with us later when we really can't afford to do so anymore. And they won't let us just print any amount of money we want. And then China wants to go conquer everything. And Tibet is the place to make a stand against them non-violently, preempting the danger of World War III, which will otherwise definitely happen. So that's my premise. And people, I emphasize the positive. I emphasize the vision of the watershed of Asia, the water tower of Asia, nourishing 3.7 billion people with water from the glaciers of Tibet, which are melting not just by global warming, but by Chinese mismanagement and destruction of the environment 3 times faster than global warming would be having them melting. And that's going to dry up the river systems of 3.7 billion people in Southeast Asia, India, Pakistan, all the way to China itself. So that's my book. That's the main premise of my book. And then I show explicitly, based on Dalai Lama's own statements, his own arguments, his own proposals over 45 years, what he offers the Chinese and what a bonanza it would be for them to change their policy and befriend a person who is friendly to everyone in the world and who is the most popular. Actually, last November, he was voted most popular man on earth by a Harris poll, International Herald Tribune, worldwide, including Asia. Of course, not China. They're not allowed to vote. They're not allowed to mention his name because of the silly behavior of the government. But he is, the Chinese, if they joined in liking him and working with him, they would benefit, not lose. They would benefit enormously. And so I kind of prove that in the book, and people like it. Well, this one at this time specifically is very, very intensely mattering. And I think a future one will also matter. But unfortunately, if the Chinese miss this opportunity, and the world actually misses this opportunity by not supporting him enough to make the Chinese see that they really must switch their policy, then it will be a lot of worse mess. I mean, really bad. It'll make Iraq, when the Chinese attack Siberia, which is where it will start, when North China is completely dried up, and they want the rivers of North Asia. When they attack Siberia, and then the U.S., Russian, Japanese alliance, European-Japanese alliance goes against them, and there's cyber wars everywhere, and then probably nuclear, because they'll have an unstoppable, huge army. It's going to be just terrible. And that would happen, I think, if there's no switch in the next 4 or 5 years, maybe 8, 10, that will happen, in the 2020s, because there'll be no more water. People go on, you see these programs, by 2100 we'll be in tough shape. we are in tough shape now, and it's going to accelerate beyond people's imagining, the whole thing, you know. And North China, the Yellow River in North China, the cradle of their civilization, is nearly dried up already. And their headwaters are Tibet. That is Tibet. It's a water tower. And it's where everything is stored, and it flows down there when it's not the monsoon cycle. And without it, Asia is finished, and tremendous distress arises, and upheavals and migrations. I mean, it's beyond conceiving, really is. He will die in Tibet, and Tibet will be in the path of being restored, its environment. It will have its internal true autonomy, the whole plateau. And the Tibetans, as they have for thousands of years, will be taking care of the environment in that plateau, slowing down the rate of warming. And then if China is then rekindling its Buddhism, which they would have to do if they recognized him and behaved nicely, they would have to let their own people, and that's 700 million Buddhists, would be going nuts. I mean, you can leave a few hundred for the Muslims and a few hundred for the Pope, 100 million, no problem. There's still 700 million Buddhists in China. And they will be calming down about this greed-driven, industrialized, wreck your rivers, poison the air, and make money, money, money. You can't eat it, you can't breathe it. You know, it's not medicine, money isn't, it's just paper. And they'll stop that, or they'll lessen that, as we have to lessen it, as Europe has to lessen it, everybody does. And then we'll be on a good path, you know. In other words, if this switchover occurs, which I think it will, I call it the Obama Dalai Lama revolution, peaceful revolution. And if this happens, everything will be fine. So I'm not into a panic like he's going to go any minute. Also, he's only 74, and he can last another couple of decades easily. But even that won't be necessary, because a human being, when under the gun, can do amazing things. You know, like I know people in Central Europe, in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel, you know, Lech Walesa, these guys. Nobody believed they could be free of the Russian domination without violence, but they were. And they just said no, and they stood up, Velvet Revolution, and that will happen. It's going to happen everywhere. That's our new age, and it will happen definitely before Dalai Lama dies, and he will be like a leading hero of that event worldwide. Muslims, Christians, atheists, secularists, everyone will think of him as having helped turn the tide. He was the one who reacted to 9/11, writing George Bush a letter. You know, of course, Mr. President, that violence never helps a violent situation, and I'm sure you'll have a wise response, which unfortunately he didn't do because of manipulation by whatever, you know. But poor fellow, you know. But he showed us actually all how hopeless that approach is, trying to conquer everybody. He did show us that.